Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Inside the Admissions Office, the official podcast of InGenius Prep and your go-to resource for expert admission strategy. If you're navigating the college admissions process, you're in the right place. Here, we bring you insights from former admissions officers, the very people who've reviewed applications and made acceptance decisions, so you can approach your journey with clarity and confidence. Our strategies have helped countless of students get into top universities, and whether you're just starting out or deep into application grind, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for another exciting episode. Today we're diving into a topic that gets a lot of questions from students and parents, and it's about competitions. Are they worth it? Do they actually help you stand out in top colleges? And what if you don't win? So to help us unpack all of this, I'm joined by Matt. He's worked with tons of students navigating their college admissions journey, and he's here to share what works, what doesn't, and how to make the most out of the competitions along the way. Hi, Matt. How are you doing?
Hi, Jillian. I'm good. Thanks for having me here.
Great. So before we jump in, as usual, we do have new listeners on our podcast. So can you share a little bit about yourself and what you do here at InGenius Prep?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Obviously, as Jillian mentioned, my name is Matt. I'm the Chief of Staff at InGenius Prep, and I work alongside our CEO, Joel Butterly, working on a variety of initiatives for the company. I've been in the college admissions space for about 12 years. For the last several years, I've been helping mentor students one-to-one, helping them prepare for, apply to, and then ultimately enroll in the top colleges in the States. But before that, I was an admissions officer at the University of Chicago, where my primary responsibilities were to recruit and evaluate students for the undergraduate college. And it's there where I really learned how and why students get into the most selective institutions. Outside of my professional experiences, academically, I studied philosophy and business, and personally, I live in the city of Chicago and love bowling and riding my bicycle.
Oh, did you mention bowling?
Yes, yeah, I'm an avid bowler.
Oh, nice. Do you do that every week?
I'm in a Thursday night league, so if you're ever rolling around Chicago and want to swing by Timber Lanes, I'll be there and we can talk on Thursday.
Nice. Rarely played bowling. I'm not too good at it, but maybe I get some good tips from you next time.
Sounds good. I look forward to that.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture about competition prep. A lot of parents actually DM'd recently on Instagram and even Facebook. They're always asking about how should they get into it? Should their child get into it? Why should parents even care about their student participating in academic competitions? They have a lot going on already with school, sports, and extracurriculars. So from your experience, what makes competition worth your time and energy to get into?
Yeah, as a background to the conversation, there are a lot of competitions. There's going to be individual competitions. There's going to be group competitions. There's going to be competitions that are facilitated in school and then ones that are facilitated outside of school. Generally speaking, I think that participating in competitions, whether they're business competitions like the Diamond Challenge or the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition, or whether they're more STEM competitions, for example, like the USA Coding Olympiad or the US Natural Chemistry Olympiad. Regardless of what sort of subject we're in, I think that competitions can help students in two ways. Way number one is interest exploration and to build fundamental skills that are ultimately going to help them grow. The second area is expressing expertise and flexing your academic skill set and then earning a credential that you can then display in an interview or in the college application. For the first part, which is really interest exploration and skill building, this is, I think, particularly relevant to students in 8th, 9th, and early 10th grade. And ultimately, competitions can serve as arenas for students to pursue things in a safe space, to learn about what those things are. So for example, if a student is interested, let's say, in entrepreneurship, then finding a group and participating in a pitch competition like the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition would be a great way to see if they like the actual experience of entrepreneurship or ideating startup businesses. Alternatively, if a student thinks that they're interested in competition math, and participating in the lowest level, which is AMC 8, might be a good way to either confirm that's an area of interest or to dissuade them from pursuing that even further. Beyond that, at that interest exploration level, I think there's also fundamental skill building, whether that's skill building in terms of independent study skills or whether that's team building and communication. I think that these are great opportunities. Now, the kind of second area I was talking about, which is really demonstrating excellence and then credentialing your skill set. I think that this is particularly relevant for students who are a little bit older, so 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. These are going to involve the pursuit of excellence at the highest level. So, for example, if we're thinking about the American math competition, it would be progressing from the AMC into the AIME. If it would be for physics, it would be progressing from the F equals MA competition into the USA Physics Olympiad. Not every student can do this. Now, obviously, at InGenius, we provide a series of preparatory programs for students to develop their skills and then perform well on these. But the reality is that some students need to find other areas to quote unquote flex their academic or intellectual muscle. Mm-hmm. And if a student is spending a lot of time and not getting the results that they want, then we need to evaluate the opportunity cost of that time and maybe pursue other things like a signature project or a research program or leadership somewhere else. But generally speaking, if a family is asking, how should I be thinking about competition prep? We should be thinking about it in a way of either this is an interest exploration or a fundamental or foundational skill building program, or this is to pursue excellence in a very specific way.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned about this is not for every student, because all students come with all kinds of personalities. Some are more introverted, some are more extroverted. So do you think there are any particular traits or skills or mindsets that tend to lead to success in these competitive settings?
Yeah, of course. And it's going to vary by competition. So for example, if it's an individual competition like USICO or AMC or USNCO, which would be the US National Chemistry Olympiad, these are for the most part tests. And the students who are going to perform well on these are ones who have tremendous independent study skills, who are able to balance achieving excellence in school and then also achieving excellence outside of school. These are typically students who are very likely also doing quite well on standardized tests, also doing quite well in school, and are able to buckle down and focus on upskilling and learning and solving problems. On that point, most of the competitions are about solving problems, which differs in many ways from what's going on in school, which is mostly learning information and then regurgitating it. A lot of these competitions go further and challenge you to think creatively and actually solve what it is they're asking you for. So in addition to a lot of these individual competitions requiring students to have great study skills, be independent thinkers, I think there is a level of creativity that a lot of families don't necessarily think about when students are pursuing this. On the other hand, there are a lot of different competitions that require teamwork. I keep bringing up a lot of the business and entrepreneurship ones. And of course, those are team competitions. They require a high level of collaboration. Typically, I find students who are successful in student leadership at school or in sort of athletic leadership, for example, if they're on a sports team, typically they do better in these. Now, outside of sort of the business competitions or the STEM competitions, there are also a variety of writing competitions that I've worked with a lot of students on. For example, the John Locke competition or the Harvard International Review are focusing more on, in the HIR category, public policy and international relations, and then on the John Locke side, more so humanities and social science. These are more geared towards students who are super interested in either a humanistic approach to ideas or a more current events approach to ideas. So these are going to be students who like to read a lot, who are engaged in potentially things like MUN or debate. So it just really depends. But if the larger question is, should my student or is my student ready or capable? The answer is yes, very likely. But we do need to think about which competition is going to best suit their interests, skill sets, and then proclivities.
Speaking of students who do really well in these competition settings, whether it be individual or group, I'm just curious about what can that momentum actually lead to. So I imagine it can open doors to some pretty exciting real-world opportunities like research roles or even a chance to connect with mentors in a field. Is this something that you've seen with our students?
Yeah, totally. A lot of students who are participating in our leadership and innovation lab either are taking their ideas and pushing them into entrepreneurship competitions, or the exact reverse, where they participated in an entrepreneurship competition, actually ideated some sort of business, and then incubated it in our leadership and innovation lab and have created large scale either businesses or nonprofits or other impact programs. On the other hand, we have a lot of students who are participating in some of our academic mentorships, which are research programs with professors where for 6 weeks they're working on the actual research and methodology of the professor, and then for 6 weeks they're actually working with a TA to help them write the paper. A lot of those students are actually looking to adapt those papers to then submit them to either journals or to submit them to competitions, again, like the HIR or the John Locke competitions. Beyond that, a lot of students are leveraging their research projects at InGenius to actually go participate in the ICEF competition, which is probably notably the gold standard of research competitions. The reality is, whether or not, like I said earlier, you're using this for interest exploration and foundational skill building, or whether you're using these competitions to flex your academic muscles, the skill sets and the credentialing can always be leveraged to get more. And getting more can equal a better resume or a better activity list for a summer program, a better resume for an internship, something to point to if you're interested in research projects on or off campus with professors. You can point to your past history. So all of these things you can circle around and say, yes, this was valuable and helped lead me to, and fill in the blank.
There are so many competitions out there. It can get overwhelming for students and parents alike. But from an admission strategy perspective, are certain competitions seen as more impactful or prestigious when it comes to college admissions?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's two ways to answer it. The first way is going to be applicable to every one of our listeners. And then the second way is going to be applicable to students who are really focused on mostly the sort of elite STEM schools like MIT or Caltech, as an example. So first and foremost, when a student is applying to college, they're needing to make an argument to the college. At InGenius, we call that argument the application persona. When I'm talking with families, I like to summarize it in a singular sentence, which is, by looking at my application, you should see that I am a fill in the blank. And every student should be filling in the blank. For example, by looking at my application, you should see that I am an experienced software engineer or coder interested in coding tools to help disabled individuals. Now, when you're making an argument, then everything else in your application serves as evidence to that argument. And that evidence will include everything from your personal statement to what your teachers say about you in the letters of recommendation, to what courses you selected in high school, and then, of course, what your activities are. And those activities are going to be displayed in the common application on the activity list and on the honors and awards section. So when somebody says, are there better or worse competitions? At large, that answer is yes, of course. There are better and worse competitions depending on how you're presenting yourself to the colleges that you're applying to. So for example, if you're suggesting that you want to be an engineer, so you're applying to undergraduate engineering programs, or you're applying to undergraduate math and physics programs and arguing that you want to be an engineer, yet all of the competitions that you've been participating in are, for example, the John Locke competition or competitions related to poetry submission, then there's going to be a disconnect between how you've been spending your time and what it is that you are arguing to the college, which ultimately is an argument of what you're going to participate in while you're at the college, which professors you're going to interact with, and in reality, contribute while you're on campus and then eventually the alumni community. So in that sense, the best answer is a valuable competition is going to depend on what your application persona is. Now, in the other sense, which, as I mentioned earlier, there are competitions generally that are more understood or better known to admissions officers and to colleges. And there are ones that, if you actually do achieve the highest level, you're going to be, to a degree, rewarded. So, for example, if we're looking at students who are interested in computer science, if they're located in the US or in an area where they can participate in the USA Coding Olympiad, and there's different levels to that. There's bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And if you are earning or passing through all these different levels and achieve the highest, which is platinum, now you're basically suggesting that you're one of the top sort of competition coders that participate in this. And it's such a well-known competition that actually means something. Same thing with the AMC graduating to the AIME, which means that you're in the top couple percentage points of all test takers. These things mean something. So depending on what the end target is, there are certainly better or worse competitions. But that only really becomes important if you are focused and able to achieve the highest results.
I'm curious about the strategic part for students, whether they should focus all their energy on one area, like going all in on math or science competitions. I'm really thinking about whether colleges actually view this as a balance between specialization and diversity, between competitive achievements, or they prefer someone who's demonstrated a broad range of interest skills.
Yeah. And Jillian, I think that the question, or at least how I'm understanding the question, is diversification in pursuing your interests. Whether or not it's reasonable for a student to spend most of their time preparing for and then pursuing competitions, or whether or not it's more valuable to find a balance between competitions and other activities, or whether the best solution is to focus on activities and then competitions. As I understand that question, then my answer is as such. The best way to support your application is by pursuing high-level opportunities that other students that you're being compared with don't participate in. And the best way to realistically do that is through entrepreneurship and then also research. That's a huge reason why at InGenius we've spent so much time and energy developing the Strong Leadership and Innovation Lab and then also the Academic Mentorship Program. Because if a student is spending time developing their sort of own entrepreneurial programs, other students can't do that. And they can apply their own skill sets and interests to develop something that they can measure its impact. For example, I was working with a student over the last several years who, in terms of competition, was entrenched in speech and debate and then entrenched in MUN. That student was earning a very meaningful number of awards regionally and then nationally in both, and was doing quite well. But for every great debater, there's another. For every great MUN participant, there's another. What was really the focal point of the student's application was their nonprofit organization that over 2 years, she was able to develop beyond her home city to have 5 or 6, I believe, regional satellite programs that was some sort of like a social justice law clinic around both consent and then also homeless resources. Ultimately, the student got into Cornell and then Duke, 2 fantastic schools. While she had wonderful codified and credentialed awards from MUN and debate, what distinguished her was really the signature project and her ability to point to all of the things that she did to develop a signature project, how she correlated her summer internship, how she correlated a mentorship she found with a local judge into that. So if the question is a question about time allocation, should we spend more time pursuing competitions or should we spend more time pursuing activities? I think that the answer is always going to be, in order to stand out in a competitive admissions space, we need to focus on the development of a distinct application persona and supporting that distinct application persona with, at minimum, a research project pursuing a question academically, and then also an innovation project where you're able to measure the impact. If we can focus on those and then there's remaining time, then let's go focus on flexing our muscles, which is what I had mentioned earlier, through things like competitions, however form they may take shape in.
Now, I kind of want to dive into something that's not always easy to navigate. What happens when a student doesn't win a competition? Like after putting in so much time and effort, it's very natural for them to feel disappointed or even discouraged. In your experience, how do you suggest students to reframe their loss?
This happens all the time. I have worked with hundreds of students over the last many years, and this happens more often than the other outcome, which is I won. The question is, where are we finding value in the competition? If the value is just to win, to have their credential, then it actually very likely means that we didn't utilize the process to develop the skills that the competition is actually meant to develop. When a student and I are working together and they're pursuing a competition and they don't get the results that they want, there are a few directions to go in. The first direction is to say, you really enjoyed doing it, and I could see that you like spending time on it, and I could see that you were actually growing. Why don't we do a few things differently, and then you can pursue it again? Different things could be, for example, enrolling in some sort of tutoring, enrolling in some sort of competition prep program, very simply finding a mentor for the next time. I think that's fine in many cases. In other cases, I think it's totally fine to actually say, I tried that and I didn't get the results that I wanted, but I actually really enjoyed the coding. So let's say we're talking about USA Coding Olympiad, USACO. Perhaps you didn't pass from bronze to silver. Totally fine. Maybe this is the segue for you to say, I'm done with competition coding, but I'm actually going to go join or participate or even start the coding club at my high school. Or I'm actually going to try to create a hackathon within my school. And we're going to actually turn that interest into a club or a signature project. Very frankly, 99.9% of students don't get into their top college because they won an award. The award is not going to be the focal point, is not what admissions officers are directly responding to. They're responding to your essays, your grades, and then your ultimate persona and background building. So in the event that you're not getting the results, we just have to ask questions. Do you want to try again? If so, how can we find resources to support you in another effort? Or why don't we not spend our time doing this, but take the best parts of your experience and apply that to either a school club, develop some sort of independent project, maybe pursue something related in a summer program or develop your summer plans around that. But there's so many different avenues to go. And ultimately, this is a particular response to students who are in that late 10th or early 11th grade. If you're not getting the results that you want, let's go spend our time doing something else that by the time we apply, we can measure. Because there's an opportunity cost to all of this, and that's going to be your ability to develop the persona and your candidacy building in the way that we at InGenius know that one needs to.
So for students who are considering competition prep right now, it's a really big step. So I think at InGenius Prep, we do offer a comprehensive competition prep program like you mentioned before. Maybe can you walk us through what a student's journey might look like from the start to finish with our team?
Yeah, we do offer a variety of competition prep resources. We have competition prep for students interested in entrepreneurship. So we have the Diamond Challenge and then Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition. We have preparation for the AMC, the American Math Competition, F equals MA and USA Physics Olympiad, US National Chemistry Olympiad, USA Biology Olympiad, Brain Bee, John Locke Competition, New York Times Writing STEM Competition. So we have a lot. Each program is actually distinct from one another because ultimately the preparation required for each is much different. Some are individual and some are team. And our programs reflect that. So some of our programs are one-to-one mentorship or tutoring, and then some of them are small groups. Regardless of whether a student is participating in individual one or a group one, the process for enrollment is pretty much the same. If you are a non-InGenius student and you're interested in these programs, you can of course contact Jillian through the podcast. You can also contact us at competitionprep@ingenius.com, and we'll send you our brochures and your flyers, send you instructor profiles, and you can see what's best. Most of our programs last somewhere in the 9 to 12 week range. If they are individual, then they can go shorter or they can go longer. But regardless, all of the preparation programs will introduce the competition, teach the strategies, do test preparation, and then we'll prepare you for the actual date of the competition.
I know we also have some elite coaches that we work with in terms of a one-on-one mentorship. Can you tell us about how these coaches are selected, where are they from, and their background?
So we've actually spent a lot of time recruiting the best teachers and mentors from all around the world who have experience and then also success in teaching these. So for example, if we're talking about who's running our US National Chemistry Olympiad, in fact, 10 of this mentor's former students have earned the highest commendation in that award. Same thing if we're looking at the USA Biology Olympiad, our mentor, over 15 of their past students have earned the highest title of that award. So our goal is to bring the best possible resources and the best possible, of course, instructors to our team. Other examples would be our instructor who teaches our entrepreneurship program in preparation for the Diamond Challenge and the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition. That coach is a consultant at one of the big four firms, went to the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, and also won the University of Chicago Booth School of Business Entrepreneurship Pitch Competition. At the highest level, we want to make sure that not only our staff, but the individuals who are working with our students are the best in the world, but also that our resources and the curriculum that we have are the best in the world. So that's obviously our promise to our students, and that extends to our competition prep program.
So before we wrap up, one final question. For students who are interested in competition prep right now, what's that one tip to get them off a great start? And for their parents supporting them in the process, what's that one way they can support and be most helpful?
Start during a school break. So start during fall break, winter break, spring break, or summer break. If you are new to competition prep and your goal is to do well, you don't know how much time it's going to take to prepare. You don't know how challenging either the individual work, the teamwork is going to be. And because of that, you need to invest your time in a dedicated time frame, which can only be found realistically during breaks when you don't have demands from schoolwork or other programs. The worst thing that a student can do is to pursue competitions at the expense of developing their academic candidacy at school and then candidacy through other extracurricular activities. If you find yourself spending so much time preparing for competitions and not nurturing the other areas that colleges care about, then we're going to have a problem. So my one piece of advice is, if you're new to this, spending time during winter break or spring break is a wonderful way to start, where you can just sit down and try it out and do it, then ultimately determine how much time you need, that then you can jump in appropriately.
Okay, that's all questions that I have for you. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt, for this episode.
Awesome. Thanks, Jillian. It was great to see you.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. And if you would like to speak to one of our experts, you can always set up a complimentary strategy call with one of our enrollment counselors by following the link in our episode description. And for more information and access to additional resources, you can always register for our webinars, which is also linked in our episode description. If you have any questions or would like to request a topic for a future episode, you can email me directly at jillian.yong, that's JILLIAN.YONG@ingeniusprep.com. Thank you for listening to another episode of Inside the Admissions Office, and don't forget to follow the podcast so you're notified every time a new episode is available. That's all for now, and I hope that this was helpful for everybody tuning in, and we will see you in the next episode.